Hey gang, welcome back again to Ken Tamplin Vocal Academy, where the proof is in the singing. I'm continuing my isolated vocal series, and next up is Scott Weiland. The band is Stone Temple Pilots, or known as STP, and the song is called Interstate Love Song. Now, we know of Scott from a lot of different songs, not the least of which are songs like Plush, for example, and I've done some things on that. In fact, there's an all-girl band named Plush. Kind of creepy. It was about some girl that was dying, and the dogs are trying to sniff her and find her. some murder somewhere. Maybe there's a point in that somewhere. But anyway, I want to dive right in, and Scott Weiland, Plush, let's do this. Here we go.
Waiting on a Sunday afternoon for what I read between the lines. Your lies.
I like his waiting on a Sunday afternoon, lie. And then he kind of breaks that into like a pharyngeal spread, kind of like Glenn Hughes a little bit. So it's kind of like a modern day Glenn Hughes, Eddie Vedder, touch of Cornell tone in there, but he's got his own thing. And maybe a little Lane Staley kind of stuff. Like they all kind of maybe borrowed a little bit for some of their sound, not necessarily vocal tone, but the overall band sound and melodic sound. And I just like it. It's kind of cool. So it's a really cool tone. I really appreciate that. Here we go. Let's continue.
Feeling like a hand in rusted chain. So do you laugh or does it cry? Reply.
Cool stuff. And the snappiness of this is a lot dependent on the rhythm too. So I want to put the rhythm up. Hopefully I won't get blocked for this. I try to be careful how much of the rhythm section I use, but it's always kind of cool to hear how the vocal works against a rhythm track. So
waiting on a Sunday afternoon for what I read between the lines.
And it kind of, there's a little bit of Pearl Jam influence there in the rhythm section, if you ask me. Maybe I'm wrong, but it sure feels that way to me. Maybe you guys can correct me and say, no, it's more like this. So go ahead and make your comments. I'm open. Check it out. Next phrase.
Leaving on a southern train only yesterday.
By the way, I want to point something out. In this era, I forget when this was released. I want to say 92, 93, 94, early 90s, right in, maybe 94. That most of these, most grunge bands, not that there weren't some power pop bands that were coming up the ranks too. There was a lot of very, very poppy, power pop punk kind of band sounds that were happening. And this being, this, I think they were a San Diego band. So Orange County, San Diego, there were quite a few bands. Jesus Wore Dickies. There's, in fact, I've worked around that area because I used to live in Costa Mesa, Newport Beach area for most of my life. Anyway, and so, but the harmonies on this are not typical a third following the melody, kind of bubblegum, harmonies. And then they weren't really dark, only get a fourth or only sing a fifth underneath something. So we weren't too melodic, but we're adding a harmony, but we want to sound modern. We want to sound different. These are kind of interesting, intricate harmonies that he does here. Check it out.
Leaving on a southern train only yesterday.
So, leaving on a southern train only yesterday. Right. He's following the actual, what the chords are doing underneath the vocal rather than following just the melody of the vocal. Pretty cool, pretty interesting. Let's continue. Here we go.
Southern train only yesterday. You lied. Promises what I seem to be. Only watch the time go by. All of these things you said to me.
So Scott must have had some background in, a choir of sorts or something to know how to do that, because it's very musical. It's not just random or finding some way to make a harmony work and try to avoid a major third or whatever. I think that's interesting. I like his tone. It's really cool. Next phrase, here we go.
Breathing is the hardest thing to do. With all I said and all that's dead for you. You lied. Goodbye.
As far as actual intonation and pitch, Scott was one of the better people with pitch. Now, maybe Eddie Vedder was maybe more of a tough guy singer. Cornell, certainly. Cornell was great with pitch, too. Really good. So I shouldn't exclude him. And Lane Staley, there were the handfuls of guys there. But it's a really rock solid intonation and pitch. And so that's another kudos, because at a time when everyone was really psychedelic and real 60s and garage bandy, and especially Nirvana and bands like that were coming through the ranks, they weren't emphasizing pitch or even virtuosity in their playership. It was more about, being depressed and telling stories about depression and sounding different than 80s metal. I mean, it was this huge shift to get away from that sound. And these guys kind of didn't care. They were just writing great songs. You know what I mean? Shouldn't they say they didn't care? That wasn't their emphasis, was to try to pull away from 80s metal as hard as they could. They kind of incorporated a lot of it together, and I don't think that was such a bad thing, personally.
Leaving on a southern train only yesterday, you lied.
That's a cool harmony there. Check it out.
You lied.
It's a suspension. He's singing a sus on something. He brings it back. He does that on the other part of the song, too. It's really cool. Let's listen to it one more time. Check it out.
You lied. Promises what I seem to be, only watch the time go by. All of these things I said to you.
Yeah, the precision on the harmonies are really concise. Another point to mention is when you're doing a suspension on a harmony, like let's say you're playing an A and you're playing A7, so you play the sus of it and you come back, and then you do a resolve, like they're resolving the chord. I'd have to play the instrumentation to show you what I mean. But it's really hard to get the pitch and intonation to sound that precise only singing one single vocal. It's another thing to stack a bunch of vocals and have them have randomizing errors, so to speak, so that it works really well and it's thick and it's fat, and you don't hear any pitch issues or intonation issues, whereas you don't hear that at all, and it's only like a little 3-part going on there, and it's rock solid. So anyway, gang, thank you for joining me. Please like and subscribe to my channel, and I have more of these coming your way.
Southern train only yesterday, you lied. Promises what I seem to be, only watch the time go by.